Hi guys, and welcome back to Hilltop Farm, and welcome to another Sunday Soapbox. Although technically not Sunday, because Sunday is Christmas Eve this week, and I don't particularly want to do a soapbox on Christmas Eve. It doesn't seem very fitting, does it? So this is actually going to be kind of a Saturday soapbox, but I'm still calling it Sunday. Okay. As, well, I think anyone in Australia will know, it may have been reported overseas. In Melbourne yesterday, there was a terrible incident where a SUV accelerated up to, I believe, 100 kilometres an hour and mounted the footpath. And anyone who knows Melbourne will know that it's got a tram system that operates on the roads, so there are tram stops dotted along. And this SUV went into a crowd of people at excessive speed. It hit 60 people. Now, as of me doing this video, there have been reported no deaths, thank goodness. But I know there are 4 people, including one little kiddie, who is critically ill. And I know they have brought the homicide squad into the investigation. So that, to me, it kind of sounds like they're not expecting at least one person to pull through. So, yeah, it's a pretty tragic thing to have happen just prior to Christmas, well, any time, but obviously a few days before Christmas. The initial reports when it first happened were they were speculating as to whether it was a terrorism act or not, and I can understand why they would think that. With the recent terrorist attacks in London and Paris, with people using vehicles, to run people down. So I understood that. My main complaint, and it's a huge complaint, I can't shake it, I feel very strongly about it. The news report I read this morning, to me, is a perfect example of the media spreading and encouraging racism and discrimination and unnecessary fear. Now, the opening line of the news report I read this morning, well, I won't read the whole line, but the opening 3 words are an Afghani man, or an Afghani man. Okay, this is under the headline about this lunatic driving into the crowd, didn't know whether it was terrorism or so forth. Okay? Now, as soon as you read that, you automatically conjure up a mental image in your head, and you do think terrorism. Terrible thing to say, but you do think that way. Further down, it says, Mr. Nouri is an Australian of Afghani descent. Now, so he's an Australian. He's Australian like my children are Australian. He's Australian like my wife is Australian. Now, my wife was born here. She has 2 Scottish parents, but she was born here. If she'd have done this, they would not have reported a Scottish woman, blah, 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 blah. It wouldn't have been relevant. But the fact that it's an Afghani, suddenly this person's descent is relevant. And that infuriates me, because all you are doing is encouraging racism and fueling hatred. And it's unnecessary. This man is an Australian. Okay, he's an Australian of Afghani descent. They have subsequently proved that is absolutely nothing to do with terrorism, nothing to do with ISIS sympathisers, nothing to do with any of that. This man is a 32-year-old man that has a drug problem and a history of mental illness. Okay? This could be any 32-year-old Australian from any descent. Afghani, Scottish, English, Greek, Italian, French, American, Brazilian, it doesn't matter. It could be any 32-year-old Australian. Okay? Every country, Western country especially, has problems with drugs. There's a percentage of our community that has problems with drugs. Okay? Often those drugs lead to mental illness. Sometimes people have mental illness and it leads to drugs. Either way, it's a very sad situation. And it's tragic that either the drugs or his mental illness have led him to do this terrible, terrible, terrible thing to these people. And I agree with everything that's been said in this, except for drawing attention to the fact that he's of Afghani descent. The media would only draw his ancestry to our attention if he were Muslim, Afghani, Middle Eastern, anything like that. North Korean, certainly. Oh yes, we bring that to our attention, I'm sure. But if it's a country that they consider is no threat to us, they wouldn't mention it. And I challenge 9 MSN and 9 News who published this piece of crap, right? I challenge them to prove me wrong on this, right? The article didn't actually have the name of a particular reporter, an individual. Otherwise, I would be emailing them to get in contact. Okay? But I'm challenging 9 MSN for this, because this is an absolute disgrace. An absolute disgrace. The world is full of hatred. Okay? And I know that so much against Afghanis, Middle Eastern people goes back to Osama bin Laden and 9/11, and yes, that was another tragedy and it was awful. But at the end of the day, most of us are intelligent human beings. Most of us know that it's a tiny, tiny percentage, okay, of any community that's an extremist and takes things to those extremes. Okay? Unfortunately, these Muslim extremists took this to the extreme on the world stage. Right? And they've condemned every other Muslim in the world because of it. But most Muslims are decent, law-abiding human beings like you and I that just want to live alongside their neighbour in harmony. Every religion has its extremists, and the extremists of any religion will often do stupid things. but you can't tar everyone with the same brush. You just can't do that. Okay, and that is what the world is doing. And it's not being helped when the media encourages it with bits of crap like this. Alright? People that are concerned about what happened in Melbourne are going to read this article, regardless of whether it mentions this person's descent. Okay? So why put it in there? It's just fueling hatred. And that's all from the Sunday Soapbox. I'd be interested to see what your comments are. Because I certainly, as I say, know that if this guy was Australian born of Scottish descent, it wouldn't have been mentioned because it's not newsworthy, that part of it. It's not, no one's interested. Anyway, put your comments in the comments below if you agree or disagree. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Hit subscribe if you don't want to miss out on any future videos. And until next time, it's goodbye from Hilltop Farm. See ya!